I've always been a night owl. There's something about the stillness of the world after midnight that feels like a secret only a few get to share. My name's Ethan, and I grew up in a small town in northern Washington, surrounded by dense forests and winding trails. My friends and I would often go on midnight hikes, not because we were adrenaline junkies, but because it felt like the forest belonged to us when everyone else was asleep. We'd pack a few flashlights, some snacks, and trek into the woods, laughing and telling stories to keep the darkness at bay. Most of the time, it was uneventful, just us, the stars, and the occasional deer darting through the underbrush. But one night in the summer of 2022, something happened on a trail we'd walked countless times before. It's been over 2 years, and I still can't explain it. The trail we chose that night was called Blackthorn Path, a 5-mile loop through a valley about 20 minutes from town. It was an easy hike, mostly flat, with a clearing halfway through where we'd usually stop to rest. There were 4 of us: me, my best friend Jake, his girlfriend Sarah, and her cousin Matt, who was visiting from out of state. Matt was the outdoorsy type, always talking about survival skills and how he'd camped solo in places like Yellowstone. He was the one who suggested the midnight hike, saying it'd be a fun way to show him the local wilderness. We didn't think much of it. Blackthorn was our go-to trail, and we'd never had any issues before. We met up at the trailhead around 11:30 p.m., our backpacks loaded with water, granola bars, and a cheap Bluetooth speaker Jake insisted on bringing to play music. The air was cool, with a slight breeze carrying the scent of pine. The moon was nearly full, casting a silver glow over the forest, so we barely needed our flashlights. As we started walking, the mood was light. Jake and Sarah were joking about some dumb movie they'd watched, and Matt was going on about how he could navigate by the stars if we got lost. I was content to just listen, taking in the familiar crunch of gravel under my boots. About 20 minutes in, the trail dipped into the valley, where the trees grew denser and the moonlight struggled to break through the canopy. That's when I first noticed something off. The forest was too quiet. Normally, you'd hear crickets, owls, or the rustle of small animals in the underbrush. But that night, it was like someone had flipped a switch. No insects, no birds, nothing. Just our footsteps and Jake's speaker playing some lo-fi playlist at low volume. I mentioned it to the group, but Jake just shrugged and said, "Maybe the animals are sleeping." Sarah laughed, but Matt's expression changed. He stopped walking for a second, tilting his head like he was listening for something. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's weird." We kept going, but the silence started to feel heavy, like it was pressing down on us. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, though I told myself it was just my imagination. About halfway to the clearing, Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. "Did you guys hear that?" she whispered. We all froze, straining to listen. At first, I didn't hear anything, just the faint hum of Jake's speaker. Then, from somewhere deep in the valley, came a sound, a low, rhythmic whispering. It wasn't words, not exactly, but it had a cadence, like a chant or a murmur carried on the wind. It was faint, but unmistakable. "What the hell is that?" Jake said, turning off the speaker. The whispering stopped the moment the music did, leaving us in that oppressive silence again. Matt shone his flashlight into the trees, but the beam didn't catch anything except branches and shadows. "Probably just the wind," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. Sarah grabbed Jake's arm, her eyes wide. "That wasn't the wind," she said. "It sounded human." We stood there for a minute, debating whether to keep going or turn back. Matt, trying to play the tough guy, insisted we were fine and that it was probably just an echo from some distant campsite. I wasn't so sure, but I didn't want to seem paranoid, so we pressed on toward the clearing. The whispering didn't return, but the silence felt even heavier now, like the forest was holding its breath. When we reached the clearing, we set up camp, Well, not really a camp, just a spot to sit on some logs and eat our snacks. The moonlight was brighter here, illuminating the open space, and for a moment it felt like we could relax. Jake turned the speaker back on, keeping the volume low, and we started talking about random stuff to shake off the unease. But then Matt stood up abruptly, his flashlight pointed toward the tree line. "There's something out there," he said, his voice low. I followed his gaze, expecting to see a deer or maybe a raccoon. But there was nothing, just the dark wall of trees. "You sure?" I asked. Matt didn't answer right away. He kept his flashlight steady, sweeping it slowly across the edge of the clearing. That's when we heard it again, the whispering. This time it was closer, coming from multiple directions, like it was circling us. It wasn't just a murmur now, it sounded like voices, overlapping and unintelligible, but definitely human, or something trying to sound human. Sarah started to panic, clutching Jake's arm so tightly her knuckles turned white. "We need to go," she said, her voice trembling. Jake tried to calm her down, but I could see he was freaked out too. Matt, though, was acting strange. He kept staring into the trees like he was trying to figure something out. "It's not people," he said finally. "It's mimicking, like it's copying what it's heard." "What are you talking about?" I snapped, my nerves fraying. Matt didn't look at me. "I've heard about this," he said. "In some forests there are things, entities, that mimic human sounds to lure people. They're not alive, not like we are." I wanted to tell him he was full of it, that he'd been watching too many horror movies, but the whispering was getting louder, and now it sounded like it was coming from just beyond the clearing. We grabbed our stuff and started back toward the trailhead, moving as fast as we could without running. The whispering followed us, sometimes fading, sometimes growing so loud it felt like it was right behind us. At one point, I swore I heard my name, spoken in a voice that sounded almost like my mom's, but distorted, like it was underwater. I didn't say anything to the others, but I could tell they were hearing things too. Sarah was crying quietly, and Jake kept muttering, "This isn't happening."